it's Jack from Cultaholic.com, and there's more wrestling news to talk about actually. We've obviously had a news video earlier on today, lots of news in that one, and in this news video, lots of news in this one as well, surprisingly. So, without any further ado, let's take a look at those headlines right now. First of all, a WWE Superstar has been pulled from an outside event, but for what reason, we'll find out in a sec. Next up, we take a look at an update on the ongoing MMA career of AEW star Jake Hager, and finally, the reason why NXT appears to have been left out of this year's Survivor Series. First of all, there seems to have been a bit of a fallout backstage in WWE because they pulled one of their superstars from an outside event, and according to Fightful Online, it seems as though both parties are a bit unhappy with each other about this. Fightful have said that apparently WWE pulled NXT performer Xia Li from an amateur kickboxing event. Apparently they were not aware of this event until it surfaced online, or until an announcement for the event surfaced online, I should say, and then they pulled her from it. According to Fightful, they've said WWE pulled her from the event, which was said to have upset her. All of those that we spoke to within the company understood why WWE would pull her, but that she didn't understand why and thought that WWE wasn't giving her respect. Apparently, she can take responsibility for appearing on NXT more often. She went to Triple H and said she should be used more often and felt like she could hold her own. And apparently Triple H was impressed by Xia Li's initiative, and because of that, she's been on TV more. But I mean, this whole new situation maybe could work against that for Xia Li. And I mean, trying to be as impartial as possible, because I often side with the wrestlers in these cases of like the wrestler versus the company. It's much easier to sympathize with the wrestler. They're the ones actually going out there and entertaining us, putting themselves at risk. They're often very charismatic and likable, and also, you know, it's easy to side with an individual over a big corporation, which seems quite soulless. But despite that, I do see why WWE would want to pull her from this event in this instance. There's various different reasons, isn't there? Her going to this event and, you know, competing in it probably, first of all, would probably put her at a higher risk of contracting COVID-19. And also as well, I mean, generally, you know, when athletes and those sort of people sign contracts, there's often clauses that say like, don't go skydiving, don't go snowboarding, like don't do any activity that could result in injury, like of a high degree, and I think kickboxing surely counts as one of those. I mean, say Xia Li goes to this amateur kickboxing tournament, and I know it's amateur and they're probably all padded up and stuff, but imagine she gets knocked out or really hurt, or her face gets mashed up, and then she's got to turn up on TV and explain, like, they've got to just explain why, you know what I mean? And things would surely surface about this, even if she didn't appear on TV for a while. There are so many reasons why I think it was probably the right decision to not allow Xia Li to appear at this event. I mean, fair play to her for going out there and trying to do what she wants to do. And I guess it was a case of ask for forgiveness rather than permission, but WWE found out, and, you know, she's been taken away from that. Next up, Jake Hager stepped into the Bellator MMA cage once again, didn't he? He had an undefeated Bellator record. He hadn't won all of his contests. There was one no contest in there, I believe, but he was undefeated still. And this was his first fight in more than a year yesterday, and he picked up a split decision win. He is still undefeated over Brandon Colton, and there's still no L's on Jake's record. Two judges scored the fight 29-28 for Hager to give him his win in his first fight that went past the first round. They've never gone this far, they've never gone the distance, they've always been finished by Hager, but this one was in the hands of the judges, and it could have gone wrong potentially. A split decision as well, not even a unanimous one. It's safe to say that AEW were probably quite invested in this fight, really hoping that Hager would win. I mean, he was repping them, he had the AEW logo on the front of his fight attire, and also wore an Inner Circle t-shirt to the cage, blending the worlds of kayfabe and reality seamlessly. Truly a wrestler for the 21st century. Now, Hager's fight wasn't on the main Bellator card, but it was the featured pre-show fight, and it appeared on Bellator's YouTube channel, so it's safe to say that, you know, a fair few eyes got on it, and it's a fairly good position to be in, isn't it? Even if you're not on the main card, you're the one being entrusted with, I guess, getting eyes on the product and ensuring last-minute pay-per-view buys. And there's pictures all over social media now of Hager with his face looking fairly battered. He had just, you know, gone the distance in an MMA fight, so that's not to be sniffed at. But, you know, fair play to him. He's won it. He's still undefeated. AEW can still use that accolade when announcing him to the ring or whatever. And, yeah, fair play. Carry on, Jake. Go on, mate. I know he's not going in there and fighting like John Jones or anybody, but, you know, he's doing well, it seems, anyway. Next up, let's go to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, where Dave Meltzer is reporting a reason, or a couple of potential reasons, why NXT doesn't appear to be involved with Survivor Series 2020, even though it was involved last year, to a largely positive response. So Meltzer was talking, I think, about the fact that there doesn't seem to be any real big news heading into Survivor Series, but he's put, if there is significant news, it's that there'll be no NXT involvement in the show, with NXT instead building to a 6th of December takeover show. So it doesn't seem like there's even going to be any NXT takeover on the night before Survivor Series. They're going to delay that until December. Given that the NXT involvement both made the show last year and also led to increased ratings on all three brands in November with the build-up, the decision on paper looks hard to understand. And I agree with Meltzer there. I think it is a strange decision. Not only did it give NXT a boost, it also gave Raw and SmackDown a boost as well. Meltzer theorizes that there are really only two explanations. First, he says, one is Vince McMahon wanting to keep the brands separate as much as possible to prevent the potential of COVID spreading. Totally fair enough. I understand that one. He goes on to explain this is the reason they stopped taping 205 Live on Friday nights, to keep NXT talent away from the SmackDown talent and risk a two-brand infection. WWE pay-per-view shows can always risk that, but every WWE breakout to date has started at the Performance Center. But he goes on to explain a possible alternative theory as well. The other reason is simply a mentality to not portray NXT as a major brand on the level of Raw and SmackDown. That coincides with no NXT talent involved in the recent draft, and it's one thing, oh yeah, that's true as well actually, I've just realised. Because even though last year it was very much a case of NXT is not the brand below the other two, it's on an even playing field, they're the three brands of WWE. Nowadays it does seem like NXT's back down a tier below, doesn't it? Meltzer goes on to say, that coincides with no NXT talent involved in the recent draft. It's one thing if a minor WWE product loses weekly to a competitor, AEW Dynamite, and a very different story if a major WWE brand does. So Meltzer, they're theorizing that maybe they don't want to portray NXT as being on the same playing field as Raw and SmackDown, because if AEW was to beat NXT week in, week out, it would look really bad because WWE is saying, this is our big third brand, it's on the same level. Now if they're like, well, it's only NXT, it doesn't seem quite as embarrassing. With that said though, this week NXT won the ratings, I believe, and I think also put on a fantastic show. That Halloween Havoc show was maybe the best NXT show of the year so far. It was very entertaining from start to finish. So fair play to NXT. Hopefully this is the start of a bit of a resurgence in form. And finally, Meltzer's also been talking about more details on last week's Le Dîner Debonair segment between Chris Jericho and MJF, where they sang Me and My Shadow, the swing classic. They all did a dance, there was choreography and everything. Meltzer seems to have dug the dirt and got some details, so this is kind of a making of, behind the scenes kind of story. Meltzer said, regarding the MJF Chris Jericho segment on the last week's show, I struggled to read American dates because they're backwards. On the 10/21 show, 21st of October show, I got it in the end, where they did the musical number, it was MJF's idea. He came up with the idea after watching the movie Rocket Man and wanted to do the song Honky Cat. Jericho went with the idea, but it was Jericho who pushed for Me and My Shadow, which in my mind is the superior song actually, but whatever. This was a long process, as Jericho was the one who went to get the rights to the song to do it, put together the choreography with members of the cheerleading squad, and both put together ideas for the beginning and the end. Jericho tried to base it, this is still according to Meltzer, on the Blues Brothers, where they would do over-the-top musical numbers, and when it was over, nobody sells them and they just go right back to whatever they were doing. MJF flew to Tampa on the 19th of October to rehearse with Jericho, and it was shot on the 20th in Jacksonville. So they had a pre-rehearsal for that as well, which is adorable. Apparently the shoot lasted 7 hours. The dance routines were done with minimal rehearsals. They went over everything a few times right before they would shoot each sequence. Jericho and Kevin Sullivan, not that one of the kind of production direction sort of guys for AEW backstage, edited for about 7 hours on the 21st. Then, 2 hours before Dynamite was about to go on air, there was a last minute issue over the rights to the song, and they had to drop in a different version and re-edit it. The finished product got to the truck 22 minutes before it was scheduled to air. It sounds like a long and stressful process, but it did grab attention, so maybe it was worth it in the end. And that is it for this news video. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. Let me know what you thought of any of these stories in that comment section down below. Stay safe out there, keep yourselves positive, and I'll see you very soon.